Hi everyone, this is Endgame number 13 of the 100 Endgames you must know. Today we are covering the Rook Pawn on the 7th rank versus Knight Ending, and we are going to determine when it is drawing and when it is losing. And so with that being said, let's explore the position that's on the board here. So here's white to move, and after white brings the knight closer to the board and black pushes, we see that, okay, indeed, the pawn is on the 7th rank. And and here, actually, it's really interesting. White just moves their king. And the more you think about this position, the more you look at it, it is actually really difficult for black to move closer to the knight. Because these squares are obviously covered, and either of these two squares are subject. You will lose the pawn if you if you step onto any of these two squares. And this is what the author calls a barrier, and that the knight creates. And with this barrier, the knight actually buys enough time for white to bring over their king. So I'm just put it on the board real quick. Obviously can't, and you obviously can't. So that means black has to go around this barrier, and it's very, very important to remember, or might be very useful to remember, that the barrier the knight makes is an L shape. And let's say if the king wants to go around this barrier like this, well, then play could look something like this. When the king gets too close, the knight moves back, and the king entraps the other king into the corner, just like we've seen in one of the previous endings. Actually, it's all connected. Uh, and if the king tries to walk around the barrier like this way, it's still not good enough, as the knight goes in the corner again, and the king is imprisoned in the corner. Okay, so let's look at another example of this. So in this position, we see that the knight and king placement are slightly different. So we know that the white's next move is going to be a king over here. So what if black knows about the barrier that the knight is going to make on the square and tries to go around it preemptively? This is still not winning because the king walks in. The king's placement is also slightly different in this position too. And yeah, this is just a draw. So yeah, difference between this, the kings are in slightly different spots. The king is more in the corner. So in this position, the king is close enough to actually guard the knight when the king walks around. But if the king goes here, then we have another position here where there is another barrier made that looks slightly different. For example, if king goes here, then this would stop the king. And if the king, let's see here, if the king, doesn't like me, goes here, yeah, or here, it also stops the king here. Now, you might be wondering, okay, why not knight g3? Well, now the king is awfully close, and it shoulders out the king. And here, if we do something like this, it gets a little bit dicey here because the king has enough time to get out and promote the pawn. So you can't do the same knight g3 barrier because the king is in a different spot. So in this case, you make a new type of barrier like this with the pawn right here. And so these are two patterns that you should be familiar with. The first pattern with a knight on g3. Knight on g3, creating this L-shaped barrier. Or, g6, or, but in this case on g3, a knight's distance away from the rook promotion square, rook pawn promotion square, and this other pattern with another L shape like this on the f2 square. So if you can remember those two patterns, then you will have a lot more success defending these endgames with the knight. And also, just to conclude, A knight on its own cannot stop the promotion of the rook pawn on the 7th. Just to make that clear. But its ability to make a barrier delays the king long enough for the side with the knight to bring in their own king to imprison the side with the pawn's king into the corner, securing the draw. So hopefully you learned a thing or two. And in the next one, we will be looking at more rook pawn versus knight endings.